Thomas is a tank engine. In fiction, he lives on the island of Sodor, off the coast of the Isle of Man in the UK. But in non-fiction, the last LBSCR E2 class that Thomas is based on was scrapped in the 1960s. So it's probably for the better that he isn't real, because that wouldn't be an easy conversation. And yet, here is Thomas in our world. And here, and here, and here. And wherever you find Thomas, you'll find Thomas fans, young and old, prancing around, waving their misleading guards flags, and precariously balancing models on the footplates of locos.
Stop!
After nearly 75 years since the Reverend Awdry first introduced the famous engines to the world, have those who grew up with the Railway series and Thomas the Tank Engine made any impact on the railways of today? Who knows? I didn't ask anyone. But stay around and I'll natter on about what I think, and I'd like to get the conversation going about what you think in the comments. In railway preservation, there's often a prejudice that Thomas fans aren't as serious as those who have appreciated locomotives as machines first, not as characters. It's a fair comment because often the interest comes from a generational legacy, a hobby passed down from grandparents and parents, whereas for others it comes from watching some smiling, toy-looking characters on the TV. Knowledge of the mechanics and history of the real things isn't necessarily going to be appealing. I also grew up watching Thunderbirds, but I don't have any of the courage or skill needed in becoming a firefighter or a paramedic to help people. Please don't have an emergency near me. You do learn general knowledge about how railways operate from the stories. Any Thomas fan can tell you the difference between standard and narrow gauge, the importance of brake vans or the role of a signaller. But that alone isn't enough practical knowledge to last them more than 10 minutes in an actual signal box. If the show is anything to go by, then they'll just fall asleep against the wall. Hands-on jobs like efficiently managing a firebox may be a little unfamiliar compared to how sugar-coated the roles appear on screen. You can't just chuck a few chunks of coal in and off you go. It's a little more complicated than that. Having said that, the stories don't ignore the multitude of roles that are involved in running a railway. Awdry wasn't a passive author writing about a subject for the sake of an interesting read. He was an active volunteer himself, and wrote the books from his own love for railways. The passion is clear in the detailing of how Sodor's railways operate, and whilst he doesn't explicitly suggest his readers should volunteer, I'd argue that it is made very clear that behind every engine is a crew to maintain it. One gripe is that the Railway series plays on the idea that steam engines have human-like qualities, but the humans themselves are always established drivers or station masters, and the long journey to get to that point isn't really mentioned. I've had people ask me how this works, because it's easy to presume that if you want to be a driver, you just apply to be one, and you get assigned one engine to work with, like Thomas's driver Bob.
What do they call you?
Bob? No, your call sign. Bob.
In reality, progressing to a driver means starting at the bottom as a loco cleaner and going through years of training. For some companies, a driver may be associated with one particular loco, but mostly they'd be assigned to whatever loco was required that day. Personally, I don't think that any of this matters, as it can all be taught by experienced and patient volunteers who have been through the process themselves. Heritage Railways certainly need and welcome more volunteers, but whether new members are committed to learn is down to how much they want to help and how motivated they are. This is where Awdry's personal passion for railways is vital, because it's directly passed on through his work. It gets children and adults alike interested in trains in a very true-to-life way. Sometimes this will just be a passing interest, but for others it'll stay with them long enough to make them want to help out with the real thing, and just maybe see them through until they're as experienced as those who didn't grow up with Thomas at all. Being set in the real world certainly helps, as I don't think this lifelong interest would be as easy to gain from Chuggington or All Engines Go, where railway safety, physics, or realism don't really matter. They're just too different from the real thing. I feel like they may as well not be called trains at all. You are not a train. Don't lie to me. Thomas at least shows trains acting like trains, and although it's glorified, it leaves enough imagination for a child to want to work with similar engines themselves. That's getting people actively involved in railways, but what about impacting the railways themselves? In several of the books, Awdry directly ruins the childhood illusion by encouraging readers to visit the places that his books are based on. Skarloey is not real. You can only see him in these books, but there is a real engine just like Skarloey. Which is just like saying Skarloey's not real, but a not alive version of him is. It's difficult to say how many people became aware of preserved railways and visited them because of the stories. But I have an aunt who knows of Thomas, but had no idea that there were still working steam engines in the world. If that's anything to go by, either Thomas's worldwide fame can be useful for publicising heritage schemes, or it's failing to do so. I don't know. Most of us weren't around to see steam in commercial use. We've only ever known diesels and electrics. So having a representative such as Thomas may just help to make people discover that steam is very much alive. Either way, if you visit any station gift shop, you'll almost certainly find a healthy stock of Thomas products. Boy, I can't wait to use my Thomas shampoo. Why does this exist? I can't count the amount of times I've heard a parent point saying, "Look, there's Henry," to literally any engine that's green, or sometimes the ones that aren't even green. Look, it's Henry! Then there's the Day Out with Thomas events, for the privileged railways that can afford the over-controlled licensing from Mattel. You never see a quiet Day Out with Thomas, because families visit time and time again to marvel at the engines with the big friendly faces. It transforms what can be an uninviting enthusiast museum into a fantasy land come to life. It's the difference between visiting a National Trust castle and going to the Disneyland castle. I don't think there's a more magical way to spark a passion in real trains than being invited into the cab and getting to blow the whistle. And if Day Out with Thomas is the one day of the year that those families visit, but it keeps them coming back, then I'd say it's worth it. Luring in the crowds through real recreations of Thomas is a winner, but big gala weekends do the same thing, so what else? Well, I do think the personification of tank engines as Thomas does wonders for preservation directly. For instance, in the 70s, Stepney was all in bits awaiting overhaul, whilst the bigger engines took priority. There, Stepney. No, you're better than them. Nah, just ignore them. It's fine. You're all good. As it was by then a character in the Railway series, someone painted a face on the smokebox door, and it wasn't long before the letters came in wishing Stepney to get well soon. This led to an appeal that saw Stepney steam again, and he is now synonymous wearing Stroudley's improved engine green as he does in the books and the show. Due to its face of fame, it's easily the Bluebell's most known loco, and even has its own fan club for youngsters. Like Wilbert on the Dean Forest Railway, or River-esque Ert and Might on the Ravenglass and Eskdale, people will visit from all over the world just to see them. I can confirm this, I've been there with some of them. Another example is the Festiniog Railway in Wales. For years an envelope was left on the table of carriages, written by the poorly loco Welsh Pony, asking for donations for it to be restored. I have no doubt that anthropomorphising a small, named loco like Welsh Pony was a catalyst in raising funds. At the time of recording, the railway have now got envelopes with a message from Prince. I mean, not that Prince, obviously, might be a little too late for that. Oh. Purple moose. Purple moose. Thank you. It's subjective to say whether Thomas fans contributing physically to railways are beneficial or not. Personally, I know quite a few who will without a doubt go far because they don't let what they've been taught through the stories limit what they are learning in person. There is a constant need for the next generation of volunteers to learn how to keep the wheels turning, and ultimately it's not just practical roles that achieve that. It's indisputable that Awdry's characters have attracted countless numbers of visitors to heritage railways. Even if they do have to put up with creepy fiberglass faces and screaming children from time to time. If it helps to pay for the future of preservation, then I think it's better to recreate the characters of Thomas rather than from franchises with a less direct connection. But who cares what I think? What do you think? Are you a Thomas fan or know someone who is, that works or volunteers out in the world of railways? Could they be suitable to carry on the torch from the current preservationists? Or does Thomas just detract from the vision that is dreamed of by preserved railways? I don't know. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you didn't really know that you could volunteer on working pieces of history, then maybe pop down to your local heritage railway and ask about what you could do. It's a hugely rewarding hobby, and even for the most shy person, it's still well worth it for the people you meet and the experiences you have. If you enjoyed this video, then hit subscribe so I can pretend that I have friends, or become a patron in the description so you can get access to a load of bonus stuff and our Discord server. Bye! Huge thanks to my brilliant patrons: Alex Goodman, GBH Train, D0280 Falcon, Sean Tempest, Nat, Alco, Random Thomas Fan, Peter Davenport, Ego, and Kildane's Coven.